I can edit the video. Welcome to Harp Talk. If this is your first time joining us, I'd love to know your name and where you're tuning in from. If you're a regular member of the Harp Talk community, you're equally welcome. It's great to see these regular virtual faces, some whom I know from private lessons, some who I've never met, but I feel like I know. The whole idea of this for anyone who's new is that you can ask questions and I will answer them. And there are no right or wrong questions to ask. I'm just here to help with any of your harping queries. But it's great to be here. I'm feeling full of the spring. The weather's beautiful. I've kind of exited a very busy period and it's just so nice to have a little breath back in my life. So with that breath in mind, let me play you Song for Sadie. This is a tune that I was kind of reminded of by a student, Anne Bauer, a regular private student, and she, I think had remembered it from an album of mine called 20 Chandler Street. It's a tune that I wrote for a great friend of mine, Andy Cambria, who had his first daughter in 2010 when I was living in Boston. And she is just a joy to the world. And so this was a tune to welcome her in. It's just supposed to be mellow, feel good, somehow embody the innocent nature of a child. So as we break it down, we're going to talk about how to infuse this piece with an effortlessness and an airiness. And I really feel like all these adjectives can really help to bring the music to life. But let me just play it for you first of all. You'll notice the left hand is playing this consistent offbeat pattern, and the rhythmic engine of this whole piece is based on that offbeat pattern. So here we go, Song for Sadie. Here's the melody. song for Sadie. And I was kind of filling in bits and pieces there. But this tune is made up really of this offbeat pattern, some simple harmonic shifts with lever changes, and we're going to focus on some of those lever changes today as part of the exercise sheet. If you're a little scared of the levers but looking to try it, this is a good gateway. The lever changes are very manageable, and the harmonic shift is so satisfying that you'll be glad that you went to the effort. So we're going to deconstruct the harmony, how to go about those lever changes, and how to kind of get this airiness and this effortlessness. Let me just quickly check in case there's anyone else. Okay, we're great. So if you've got your harp there, let's put it in the key of D major. We've got C sharps and F sharps for this one. And let's just start by making sure that we're sitting correctly at the harp. If we want to play in a way that sounds as if it feels good, if that makes sense, it has to feel good. So just making sure that your shoulders are relaxed, your core and your back is straight and your core is strong. All of our breath work is going to come from the core, and it's going to keep us afloat. With our left hand, let's put our fourth finger down on D and our thumb on the D above it. You can play with shape. When I'm doing a lot of octave work, I'm kind of going somewhere between this more standard linear or melodic left hand shape and this kind of resting shape. When I do my resting shape with the left hand, my elbow comes down a little bit. Anyone who's here regularly knows I'm a big fan of the left elbow out. It really helps support the wrist and the back of the palm. The forearm and the back of the palm become one supported limb that the fingers go down and the thumb comes up from. But every now and then, I'll actually rest my fingers on the harp and the elbow comes down. The elbow comes down because I'm resting, so I'm not using very much effort. You can barely see my thumb, but I'm just kind of bouncing the thumb, and my fingers and my wrist are incredibly relaxed. So that's why the elbow is able to come down. This is the left hand alone. This is exercise number 1 on the PDF if you're using it. The exercise alone is a great thing to practice with the metronome. Putting the metronome on a slower quarter note pulse to start with. If you're a more advanced player, you may eventually want to bring that metronome pulse back so that it's a dotted half note in every measure. By just having one click on every measure, it's really going to challenge you to have to interpret the time rather than just match the quarter note click. But the quarter note click is the place to start with the metronome, and I would work with that until you feel really confident. So putting on the metronome, we're playing the bottom D and then going up on the second 8th note to the D above it. So I'm going from this more linear position to resting on the strings and just really lightly sprinkling that mid-register with this top D. It's coming on all of our ands, so if you like, you can count out loud. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. These upbeats, they're upbeats because they come between our downbeats, our 1, 2, 3, 4 counts. I often think of upbeats as being the air between the downbeats. And if we can kind of focus in on our rhythm and control that air, we're going to be able to create so much more buoyancy in the way that we play. So we are playing the downbeat in the first measure, but then for the next 4 measures, we're just holding out the upbeats with that top D. So join me if you like. We're just going to play this pattern with the left hand. Find a way that feels good. So play with where your arm is, your hand is. Make sure your shoulder is relaxed and find a place that feels good. Once you find the place that feels good, you're going to work on letting the first downbeat sing, but the rest of the upbeats just being very light and always moving forward. So erring on the front edge of the beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 2 measures, 3, 4, back down for the downbeat, done my rhythm intensive, you'll know that counting out loud is such a great way to add another layer to strengthening your rhythmic core. It sounds a lot easier often than it is to have the metronome on, to be playing, and to actually count out loud in time. It's like adding another layer to your grid. So great rhythmic practice if that's something you're after. 1 and 2 and 2 and 2. Be sure to count rhythmically as if you were playing an instrument. So 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, back down, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. Great. We're going to now take our right hand and we're going to start by just playing one chord per measure. We're working with thirds, so D and F sharp, to E and G, to F and A, and back down. So we're just playing on the downbeat. This shouldn't be tricky, but because for 3 out of 4 measures our left hand is only playing on the upbeats, the hands aren't going to be playing at the same time. So you're marking your downbeat with the right hand, but you're moving the music forward with your left. Let's try that. So D third up to E third, F third, back to E third. Even if you don't have the hand out, you're welcome to just join me and learn orally. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3. Bring your second finger all the way into the fist. Same with your thumb in the right hand, all the way in. Once you have that, think of sonically mixing the hands together so they don't sound very separate. They're really one voice, and that takes it takes a deep listening and just trying to kind of morph your sound. Intention and really subtle nuance is everything with this kind of work. One more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. Now our left hand is going to keep going, but our right hand's going to move to just half notes. A half note, as you know, is 2 quarter notes, but because we're in 3/4 time, they're not going to fit evenly within the measure. Our second half note is going to cross over. It's going to be tied into the second measure. So we're going to have 3 half notes per 2 measures of 3/4 time. If I break that down further, 3/4 time, we have 3 quarter notes in each measure. Because we're now playing half notes, which are worth 2 quarter notes, it just doesn't fit evenly. But 2 measures of 3 equals 6, and 3 groups of 2 fits evenly into 6. So again, this is a little trickier than it sounds. We've got the upbeats going. We're going to be placing our right hand on downbeats, but now every 2 quarter notes. I'm going to count my right hand as 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And again, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3. I'm confusing myself. If I were to count the left hand instead of the right hand groupings, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1. I can't count and speak and everything at the same time. I was going to try and count 4 measures, but I'm sure you get the idea. And actually this switching between counting what the right hand, if the hands are doing separate things, switching between what the right hand is counting and what the left hand is counting is again adding another layer to your rhythmic understanding. So if you can play the notes, if the feel is good, try counting out loud. First of all, the half notes, which are in groups of 2. So you'll count 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Or the 3/4 measures, which are 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If you're kind of thinking right now, she's totally bonkers, there's no way I can do this. The only way that I can do it is because I've practiced so much, and now my hands are very much on autopilot. So the more rhythmic work, especially the more repetitive rhythmic work that you do, ostinato pattern-based stuff, the more your hands get used to going on autopilot. Once they've learned their part, they can kind of just keep going, and you can shift your musical mind onto what the other hand is doing. So you will absolutely get there. There's an incredible learning curve to some of this rhythm stuff. And, we can talk if it's something that you're interested in exploring further. There's a book out there that I wrote for hand independence and rhythmic focus, or it's just intended as a way to bring rhythm into your own practice. And there's a lot of this kind of stuff in there. But a great start is just working with these first few measures from the Song for Sadie handout. If you have it, you can switch your hands as well. And so it's really acting as an all-round warm-up, not just an exercise that's helping stabilize this groove for Song for Sadie. And let me just check in on the comments. Hi, Evelyn. You're asking, are your fingers damping while you're playing the upper D? They're not damping. If I turn my harp, you might see it a little better. They're not damping, but as soon as I play that bottom D, I'll try and do it in slow motion. I play the D, I then rest these 4 fingers on the strings, and then it's hard for you to see at this angle, but I'm just playing the D. So these 4 fingers are very relaxed. They're just sitting on the strings below the D. So naturally they're going to damp the notes beneath the D, but I've not actually played them, so they're not really damping much sound, just overtones. And then I'm lightly playing the D, but I'm not damping it, I'm just playing it. It should all feel very easy, very gentle. Okay, next exercise, and let me just pull up the music. Here we are, so I'm looking at this too. The next exercise is to keep this left hand pattern going, and you might just be doing this left hand pattern, and it is actually very difficult. So I would really work with this rhythmic engine, this offbeat pattern, until it feels very stable before you bring in the melody for Song for Sadie. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to make the melody sound that effortless. The good thing is, once you've got this offbeat pattern, you can use it for so much music making in the future. We're going to bring some 8th notes in. In general, through this piece, we want to keep our 8th notes very light. So my default touch is light on the harp. I feel like I kind of sit up as if I've been told in yoga to keep my shoulders back. But that's kind of how it feels. I often feel like if I don't think about it, I'm just kind of slouching into my notes. But I want to intentionally place my notes. I want to control the touch and the character from the very first note I play. So I would memorize all these little exercises. I would try and memorize them in sections as you go, so that you're not reading the music, but you're looking at your hands, you're listening to the sound you're creating. The 8th note pattern we're using is a 2-measure pattern that we're taking from Song for Sadie, the melody. It goes... and then I'm just in one whole measure repeating D to A. I've not written a fingering for that. If you would like a fingering, I'll give it to you now. So you can get your pencils out. I would start with my 2nd finger on F and my thumb on G. 2, 1, 2, 1, 4, 2, 1, and I'm trying to set that as a group. And then 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, when I go on from here, it's just the first time that I start that phrase with 2 to 1. From then on, I'm using my 3rd finger because I'm coming down from 1 and 2. So in this exercise, measure 15 would start with the 3rd finger. 3, 1, switch to 2, 1, 4, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 4, 2, 1. Last time. 3, 1, 2, 1, 4, 2, 1. Once you have it, we're going to speed it up. We're going to make it sound circular. So kind of thinking of each eighth note as leaning into the next one very lightly, creating this circular, consistent feeling. Try it as light as you can. Hear it sounding light. Sorry, you can hear the tap in my kitchen going. I'm going to lean into it a little more. I find that if I take that 2-measure phrase and create one kind of bridge-shaped phrase from it, leaning into the middle of the 2 bars and coming away at each end, again, it helps to make that circular shape, which makes sense because a bridge is like half of a circle. So if we do 2 patterns, it should feel like one circle. Let's put that to the left hand. If you're the kind of person who likes to work in small chunks, I would just work bring in a beat or 2 beats worth of right hand at a time, and think of the left hand as your anchor that you'll keep working. I'm starting with the left hand. Here I go. I'm starting to observe where my right hand and my left hand are matching up. And when you've memorized this, really listen to where the notes line up. Am I playing the downbeat on my right hand second finger exactly together? Am I feeling the strings before I play and leaning in? Whenever you make dynamic shapes, be very conscious, is it my right hand making the dynamic shape? Is it my left hand making the dynamic shape? Or do I want both hands to work together to create this shape? Okay, we'll move on to the next exercise. This is exercise 5. And here we're just taking an actual bit of melody from the tune that has a slide in it. If you're not a slider, that is a technical thing that you'll want to work on when doing this piece. Again, a nice opportunity to learn the slide if you've not so far. For this first exercise using the slide, we put our thumb up on G, and I'm actually putting my second finger on E as an anchor because I'm going to slide my thumb from G to F, play the F, and then play the second finger. I'm going to make a chord eventually, but for now we'll just place our second finger. If you're new to sliding, anchor your second finger on that E, your thumb on G. Be sure that your thumb isn't leaving the strings. You're pushing your thumb from one note to the next, which might feel very awkward at the beginning, but long term it's actually going to be a technique that you use to give your hand a rest. Often when I'm playing fast music, I'm sliding a lot because it takes less effort than using my fingers. And it also creates a lovely kind of legato softness to the outer edge of the melody. We're ending up on F and A for this exercise. We're just taking this bit of melody. You can do this with any part of the melody in Song for Sadie and work it over this offbeat left hand. The more kind of parts of the tune that you can isolate and work with the left hand, the more that you'll be internalizing the offbeat feel. I'll do it again. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 1. And again. Is this all making sense so far before we move on from the offbeat rhythm? We're about to go into lever changes and a little more on some slides. So any questions about practicing or playing an offbeat left hand? Let me go back here to see, oh, how do I do this now? Here we are. Becky, what do you mean by Beauty and the Beast? The van sounds like Beauty and the Beast? I guess I have to reacquaint myself with that Disney movie. I remember I used to love Beauty and the Beast. Melody's asking what fingering on thirds, 2 and 1. I like to use 2 and 1. You could use 3 and 1 if you want, but for thirds, I almost always use 2 and 1. I'm glad you love it. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the lever exercise. Again, I'm switching between you guys and my own music. Okay, so for the lever exercise, we've actually made the lever changes harder than they are in the piece, which of course is a tried and true way of getting fluid at something, is to make it harder than it actually is. So for this piece in general, I'll often preset my C naturals from middle C downwards. So we're in the key of D major, but we've got C naturals. Just so you know harmonically what that C natural is, it's the flat 7. We'll explore the harmony a little bit more, but if you're wondering like what is that beautiful harmonic color, it's a flat 7 of a major key, and it feels so open and beautiful. So we're presetting the C's. I'm going to go through right hands first. A couple of housekeeping lever rules. I almost always use my thumb. You can see here that if I use my thumb up and down on levers, it means that all my fingers are right here next to the strings. So if I want to play, I can. I'm closer to the strings. This isn't always the case. You might see me reach up, especially because we're going to be practicing this slow. Sometimes I forget that this is the way I do it when I do it fast and I use my whole hand. But for more fluid playing, you want to practice using your thumb. If the lever is coming down swiftly, I'll often just keep my thumb up there, slide it on down. But even if I'm not bringing it right down, I'll often go off my thumb, be playing a left hand note, bring it down with my thumb. As much as possible, we're trying to make these lever changes part of the music, sonically and physically as well. So you can think of it eventually as being a dance. Same with damping, by the way. Same with muting of the strings. All of these kind of extended techniques we're trying to make feel as musical or as much part of the music as possible. So we're just going to go through this 6-measure exercise without any left hand, first of all, making the changes. We've preset the 3 C levers from middle C down. We're starting by outlining a first inversion of a D triad. If you're not a harmonic thinker, feel free to note down these suggestions. Again, as we move into the actual piece, melody, chords of Song for Sadie, I'd love to encourage you to use every arrangement that you come across, every piece that you work on, as a vehicle to kind of better your harmonic knowledge as well as just learning the piece. So if I identify a chord, take a note of it so that in the future when you're playing this part of the melody, you think, oh yeah, this is just an inversion of a D triad. So measure 25, we've got a first inversion of the D triad. As we play that, we're putting down our top C lever. So we play it, C natural. Let's put it up again and do it again. C natural. We repeat the pattern. We then shift down to a first inversion of a C triad. E, G, and C. We have the C natural, so it's going to work. As we're playing the C inversion, we bring the F lever below middle C down. The next measure in the right hand, don't worry, we're going to do this loads of times. I need to do it loads of times too. The next measure, we're playing E, F, D, A, D, A. As we're doing that, we're actually going to bring the C sharp lever up again. We don't need to do this in the music. We could leave it down the whole time, but I want to make it a little bit more difficult than the actual pieces. So C sharp goes up. Our next shape is G, A, and E. I'll go over what this is harmonically. F is going to be on the bass at this point. It's a beautiful F major 7 chord, but you don't need to worry about that right now. The notes are G, A, and E, and we play that for 2 measures and we can rest. So for most of the measures of this exercise, we're playing and we're turning a lever per measure. These 2 measures, we can rest. You want to try and memorize the melody in this 6-measure pattern as quickly as possible so that you can be looking at your hands, kind of feeling the flow of that harmonic progression. And I do feel as you get more comfortable with the levers, or as I've gotten more comfortable with the levers, I kind of associate this flow of my hands up to the metal as being part of achieving that harmony. So it's no longer scary. I want to do it because it gives me such beautiful colors. So let's do it from the beginning again. We're on our first inversion of a D triad now. We're putting the F sharp up. We're putting the C natural down. I have to keep looking at the music. We're putting the F natural down. Putting the C sharp lever up, we rest for 2 measures, and we do it again. So F sharp up, C natural down, F natural, C sharp, rest. We do it again. F sharp, C natural, F natural, C sharp, and rest. So even without the left hand, we want to speed this up. Make sure that you're not slouching into your right hand as you're doing this, but you're actually playing lightly, beautifully, airy with your right hand. Same thing. Oh, this should be done. So, F sharp, C natural, F natural, C sharp, rest. Again. F sharp, C natural, F natural, C sharp, rest. A little faster. F sharp, C natural, F natural, C sharp. It's much more complicated to hear me doing this than it actually is to do it. But this is the idea, that you find the fluidity and then you start to add in the left hand. So we've got a D, another inversion of a D, which is why we need the F sharp for this exercise. C natural, B in the bass, F, D, F sharp lever, C natural lever, F natural lever, C sharp. Is this making sense to people? It's a lot of talking, but I want you to feel like you can actually start practicing this 1 hand at a time, build up speed, start to fluid. Like I'm imagining my left hand kind of outlining this wheel of sound. And even if you only get this 6-measure pattern kind of fluid, that's a great achievement and a great gateway to being able to use more exciting colors, more chromaticism in your music. But I'm going to go back to your questions. Any questions about levers? Someone saying, D&G family, could you let me know your name so I'm not calling you D&G? It is confusing. Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll make more sense in the music, but for everyone who is more paper trained, be sure to write out the chords. Let me just tell you the chords one more time, and then to memorize the melody. You want to work on these lever changes, not looking at music, even if it takes you months. Really spend that time, because it's really impossible. You'll get the lever changes, but it's impossible to get the flow and to listen with the depth that I would recommend if you're looking at the music. So sometimes whole pieces are more difficult to memorize, but just work at the 6-measure pattern bit by bit and try and memorize it. Let me just tell you the chords one more time, and while you can ask any questions you'd like to on lever flipping. So we've got the D chord at the beginning. Second measure is another D chord. It's just a first inversion because we've got that F sharp in the left hand. So still D major. We're then outlining a C major chord. We're then outlining a B minor chord. It's a slightly different voicing of this. We've got the B octave in the bass. Our right hand is outlining E, F, A, and D. That E gives us the 11th. This is a B minor 7 chord. The E is the 11th, just 11 notes up from the root. In jazz, they call these tensions. So anything above the 7th, 11th, 13th, 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th, these are tensions. We've got the A, and that is the 7th. So you could actually just call this B minor 11. And then we have our F major 7 chord. It's got a G in it as well, which makes it an F major 9 chord. In jazz, whenever you see a 9, like a little tiny 9, 11, or 13 written next to the chord, what that means is it's a tension. And the difference between writing a 9, which is 9 notes from the root of the chord, which is the same note actually as the second, the reason they would write 9 instead of 2 is because they want to imply the 7th as well. So whenever you see 9, you assume the 7th should also be there, same with the 13th, and so on. If you're into improvising, this would be a lovely little passage just to play around with. The lever changes are outlining any changes you'd want to make for harmonic playing, but D major, just make sure you avoid any flat C's on the D major. For the C major, the F sharp actually works. It gives us the Lydian scale. I'm sure at this point some people are thinking, this is over my head, but for those who are a little bit more further along, the C Lydian scale works great over that C chord. For the B minor, I would avoid the C's, but any other note works. For the F major, I would use any note apart from, of course, the one F sharp left. Anyway, beautiful colors to play with. Let's see, Tara is saying, I feel like I need to practice left hand alone first. Do you mean placing the chord, Tara, and then making the change? That's also a great way to practice. If you do that, be sure to also work the right hand alone with the changes, so that both hands have fluidity with the levers. Sarah's asking, what about the timing of the left hand levers? That's a great question, Sarah. Let me have a think here. 1, 2, 1, 2. I think for the most part, I'm going for the levers on the second beat of the measure. This means that, of course, I can't do it on the downbeat because my left hand is playing. I don't really want to leave it to a third beat because then it's a rush to get back to the downbeat. So a kind of loose second beat of the bar would be a great place to kind of move up, switch the lever and come down. And Sarah is asking this because this is a really musical way to approach lever changing, to try and do it on a rhythm. It can be a loose kind of rhythmic approach, but I would say second beat of the bar, Sarah. Oh, sorry, the NG family is Evelyn. Got it. Okay, well, let's just go a little bit more into the piece. And I'm just going to play for you Song for Sadie again, and I'm going to kind of stop and start with some suggestions. Feel free to write any other questions with which I can help with regarding this piece as I'm doing this. The first 8 measures are just to establish the ambience, the mood of the piece. We hear this upbeat left hand. I've written in some chord suggestions, but again, this 8 measure phrase would be a lovely place for you to start practicing improvisation. I'm often playing doing the 4/5, the 1/4/5 chords. I can't speak. The 1/4/5 chords. That's 1. Here's 4, 5. So I'm just moving between those 3 chords, our primary harmonic colors. Maybe some little trills. It's like fairy dust on top. Anyway, some kind of thing at the beginning. When I bring in the melody, I want it to ring out like a bell. So it's a different character from the improvisation that I'm doing, or perhaps it comes from nothing. Perhaps you just hear the left hand alone and then the melody comes in. But it should have a different weight, a different kind of authority. Think of it as floating on top of what the left hand is doing. It's like a little boat floating on top of the left hand tide. It should feel light. It should be erring on the forward part of the beat. So no sinking into the melody. For the first while, I just stay on D, even though the right hand melody is actually implying the G chord and at times the A chord. I just keep that left hand. This is so that when eventually I do outline the 4 chord with my left hand, it's got more impact. I'll show you what I mean. So first 2 times through the melody, staying on the D drone. When the G comes. So enjoy the shift. The thumb is still really light. I'll show you an example of what the thumb would sound like not light. Here's light. Here's heavy. Magic in it at all. So keep that thumb really light. Think of your left hand as being a divided character. That low note is your ground. The thumb is just wispy, feathery notes. harmonically, but sometimes the simplest stuff is the best stuff, isn't it? Or at least it feels great. In that A section melody, I'll often choose some little fills, and there's a couple that I do. There's one at measure 56, which I'll often do. Instead of going and just sitting on that low D in the right hand, I have this little take that same spot and try other little melodic variations. Let me give you some examples. I'll do another one. Actually, that's very like the melodic variation that's in measure 63. For that one, I often go far down on the strings. You can hear the difference between this and this. It just has more depth or dimension. I'm finding all kinds of ways to get to that G chord. So in my improvisation, I'm seeing the G chord as a destination and trying to create my line towards that. I think often the most terrifying thing about starting improvisation is you're literally creating something from nothing, and you don't know whether it's right or whether it's wrong. And, of course I can say, well, there is no right or wrong, but I still understand it can be scary. So sometimes having a destination, thumb on the B of that G chord, gives you a target note to get to, and then you can practice a whole different bunch of lines getting there. Let me move on to the B section. We have this lovely walk up from the 5 chord. 5, 6, 7, 6. This is the most exciting harmony so far. And be sure when you go up the octave there that we don't pull too hard on that top A. That's a moment that you want to just back off from the strings ever so slightly. Remember, this is a little tiny child. So there's great passion, but we have to be very delicate. When we get to those A chords, we really want to enjoy the breath. So there's quite a lot of parts of the B section. You'll notice there's nothing in the left hand. You can absolutely feel that if you like to. I probably will at times, but I'm still trying to feel the breath. So those moments of just hovering. When this melody comes in, it's very soft. And that, by the way, is one long phrase. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3. That's a 4-measure phrase. Let me just find where that is and identify it to you, because that's actually a lovely one to focus on. So from measure 74, that's a triple slide. One phrase, so just one long sentence. For the triple slide, I set 2 and 1 on C and D. For anyone with music, this is 74. If you don't have music, no worries. Put your second finger on C, your thumb on D. I'm then going to slide from D to C, from C to B, from B to A, and around that time, my second, third, and fourth are anchoring as a group onto G, F, and E. Is that right? Oh, sorry, I went one note too far. My second, third, and fourth are anchoring as a group on A, G, and F. So we slide D to C, C to B, and then we play with regular fingers. I slide there. Think of that as just being a snake-like line. All very tender. 2, 3. Here comes the C chord. So this is the flat 7 in the key of D. It's a non-diatonic note, which gives us that lovely opening up of the harmony. B minor 7. A. Sometimes I feel this. E minor. D. C major. Starting to build a little. 2, 3, 2. All the space. F natural. I start to build. E minor. F natural. C sharp's on. There aren't actually that many lever changes in the arrangement. It's just a couple. I like to do them all because then I can change up what I'm playing over this big old A7 chord. It's so satisfying. Sometimes during that moment, and I would practice that transition from the C to the B minor, F, E minor, F, E minor, lever changes. Sometimes I do this with a gliss as I land on that A, just to emphasize that moment. Sometimes instead of doing the gliss, I just clear the sound and do a rhythmic splat. That sounds like this. Again, I'm going from the C chord, and if you're practicing this, I would make a series of practice measures from the C chord onwards. That's let's see, that's measure 85. I would practice from 85 through 92. That's definitely a practice measure for the lever changes. Still so light. Lever changes. Did you hear how that makes a difference, that kind of rhythmic splat? We're setting up this sound. And so much of when I'm playing is about just that. It's about trying to kind of like set the tone, or to carry the listener's ears in such a way that they're prepared for any shifts or harmonic changes, or perhaps it's the opposite. Perhaps I want to shock the ear at times. But these are all conscious musical decisions. And the more we can think about all of these, the more musical and alive our performance. Let me ask you if you have any questions now. I think we're at the end of our session. Our next Harp Talk is going to be April 24th, and I'm actually kind of delighted that this worked. Again, if you've got any thoughts on platform, if you'd like to try Zoom, I'm kind of wary of changing up too much. I think I'd like to choose something and stick to it long term for a while. I'm happy to keep going on YouTube Live. This worked much better today. Or I'm happy doing Zoom and having a more interactive thing. It would enable you to actually speak to me, which feels crazy. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on that. But I will see you again on April 24th. And if you've got any ideas about what you'd like to cover, please let me know in advance and I'll take it into account. Okay. Let me go back to your questions. That's Evelyn gone. Bye, Wendy. Thanks for coming. Sarah's asking, go back to lever exercise 7, measure 20. It's a B chord. If so, I see the measure contains a triad, but is that all? Does it have to do with the bass? No. Let me double check. Measure 28. Let's see. 20. Oh, so measure 28 is the B minor 7 chord, and Sarah, that's because B is the root of the chord, the E is the 11th, the F is the 3rd. So if we're looking for the minor triad, it's in the bass note, in the F sharp, and in the D at the top. That's the minor 3rd of the chord. So we have our 3rd in there, B, F sharp, D. Yeah. And then we have the 11th in the 4th finger, and we have the 7th in the 2nd finger. The only thing we don't have in there is the 9th. Does that answer your question? And how do we find a chord in measure? The chord in measure 29 is a little bit more ambiguous, but it's still got I believe. I keep switching between these. It's still got the root of the chord, the F, and the fifth, the C, and then the second finger in the right hand is playing the A. So that's your F triad, your F major triad right there. Third finger on F natural, left hand thumb on C, second finger on A, and then the ninth and the seventh are the G and the E in your right hand. So it's built between the chords. When I'm trying to work out what a chord is, I'm almost always looking at the root first, knowing that the root might be on a chord inversion, but it's very likely that the root will be on one of the triadic tones, most likely the root. Where is the B section in the sheet music? The B section in the sheet music, Evelyn, is, it begins after the double bar line in measure 71. Measure 71. I think that's all the questions. Well, it's great to see you all today, and I'm just delighted that it worked. So if we decide to carry on with YouTube Live, I'm just going to do exactly this. I'm going to give the link to my general page, because then when I'm live, there will simply be a notification on the homepage, rather than me sending you a link that may or may not work due to the glitchiness. If you would prefer Zoom, let me know. I'm still open to that, and that's a format that I really enjoy as well. So, but it is great it worked today, and I'm so happy that you all joined me. Keep in touch. If you're not on the email list, do join. For anyone who wasn't able to watch, I streamed a concert through Arts Transcending Borders a couple of nights ago. That's still available on YouTube. It was recorded with the wonderful Azuri String Quartet, and I can't say enough good things about those ladies. They're just a dream to work with. And the hour-long kind of performance and Q&A includes a lot of kind of questions and answers. I talk a little bit about the music from the Harp we were recording. That's it. Keep in touch. Great to see you all.